guys, Pamela here from the Honey Sea Star, and welcome back to Crafting with Pam. So today we're going to do a little bit of quilling, and since it's fall, I figured we would embrace the harvest season. And so I'm going to show you how to make these cute little pumpkins. Now stay tuned all the way to the end or skip ahead, whichever works best for you on how you learn. But I am going to include a few variants in there, like if you wanted to make it into a hanging pumpkin, if you want to throw a magnet on there, make it into a fridge magnet, but either way, whether it be for your home or for somebody you know and love, let's make some pumpkins. So let's get started. We're going to start with 5 light orange quilling strips and 5 dark orange quilling strips that are cut to half the length. And essentially we're going to glue these together to create 5 long strips of light orange and dark orange quilling strips for our pumpkin structure. Now you can buy pre-cut quilling strips, save yourself some time. I personally like to use scrap paper, and it allows me to work with a bunch of different textures as well as paper thicknesses, and just adds a little extra twist to my quilling. But once these are all glued, then we're going to go ahead and grab a brown quilling strip. And so I also like to use unconventional tools. This is actually a buttonhole maker, but what I love about it is that it provides a nice looser spiral. And so I'm just going to wind this up, let it relax a little bit, and then add a dab of glue, and then let it rest while we work on the orange part of our structure. Now, starting with the dark orange side first, we're going to grab the same tool, and we're going to wind these up. But this time we're going to let them set and let them relax before we secure them. Now sometimes when you're working with your tools, the paper can give you a little bit of trouble. And so I always like to revert back to working with my hands. It gives you a little bit more control over your paper and what you're working with. However, they do also make even fancy battery-powered quilling tools. And so choose what works best for you and how you want to work with your project. But essentially we're going to do this with all 5 of our pumpkin strips. And then once those are relaxed, we're going to go ahead and secure them on a loose roll with some glue here. And then once all 5 are done, now we're going to do the fun part. So starting with the middle part of the pumpkin, I'm just going to squish down on both sides and then push in to give the middle part a little bit of volume. And then just kind of pairing them up where they're roughly about the same size. I'm going to create 4 crescent moons. And so same kind of concept, I'm going to squish both sides, but this time I'm going to push up with both my thumbs in the middle to create that bend. And so once we're all done with all 4, we'll essentially have 2 crescent moons on either side of that middle piece here. And then we can start putting our structure together. Now, while you're doing this as well, afterwards you can kind of adjust. For me, I'm going to take it where the big spiral pieces are kind of on top. And so just kind of play around with it. Do what works best for you. So starting with the middle piece here, I'm going to grab my glue, line the whole right side of it. Note to self, make sure your glue bottle is open. And we're going to attach the first crescent moon. Now the surface I'm working on is actually just a placemat. It's plastic though, and so what's really nice about it is it kind of acts like a nice little push pillow for your push pins, and it helps to keep your project secure and holding in place while it's drying. And then when you're done, basically just scrub off the dried glue and it's ready for your next project. And so it comes in handy in many ways. And then moving on to the left side, we're just going to kind of work in tandem and form the crescent moons here on both sides. And that way, when it's all said and done, we've got our pumpkin structure and can just sit there and set while it's drying. So once it's dry, remove all your pins. Now, for the sake of the tutorial, I did let mine stay a little wet so yours will hold a little better. But once all the pins are removed, We're going to grab it and basically start securing it with a light orange quilling strip. And so the way that I do this is kind of pinch it on all four sides. And then using my glue, I try and get all the edges of all the shapes done so that each of them stick. However, once it's fully wrapped, it really doesn't matter. It'll still hold just fine. So to each their own on how much glue you want to use. But basically, I'm just going to start with one end, pinching it underneath my pointer finger, start working it around the object. Sometimes it can give you a little bit of trouble, so as you see, you're not alone. But then once you got one side under control, then go ahead and line the next side with a bead of glue. We're going to continue to wrap it. Now for extra sturdiness, I like to continue wrapping my objects at least 2 to 3 times, which is basically the full quilling strip of the light orange. You can, for a more polished look, trim it down to, say, like right where you're going to secure the stem of the pumpkin. That way you can't see the seam and the seam is hidden underneath. Now we can start shaping our full structure. And so I'm just kind of looking at what I want as the top, what I want as the bottom. And I'm going to start pressing on both here. One, I'm going to create a little divot for it. And then on the other side, I'm going to make it nice and flat. But either way, essentially we're going to reshape the form so it's more ovular. But once we've got the shape that we like, we're going to set that aside, clean off the excess glue, and let her dry. And in the meantime, let's go ahead and make that stem. And so with the seam side, I'm going to go ahead and pinch that between my thumb and my pointer. And then I'm going to squeeze the top part, kind of bend it to give it a curve, and then push it against my thumb to give it a nice straight edge, which is going to secure to the pumpkin. And then using our tacky glue, we're going to go ahead and secure it here. And while that's drying, we're going to move on to the garnishments. So like I say before, I like to cut my own strips. It kind of gives me a little bit more control over the projects that I'm working on. And so I've got this pretty lime green that I'm going to use, and I've cut that to 1/8 of an inch. And roughly, basically the leaves are going to be 1/4 of the length of a normal quilling strip. So I'm just going to fold this in half, quick cut it down, and that way we've got 2 leaves here to work with. And then this time, I'm going to grab a toothpick. It gives it a nice tighter spiral. I'm just going to roll both of these up, and then I'm going to let them relax just like we did with the orange strips. And once these are rolled, we're just going to secure them with a little dab of glue. And then starting with the side where the seam is, I'm just going to squish both sides and push in, similar to like what we did with the first pumpkin, the orange piece, just to give it some volume, and we've got ourselves a leaf. We're going to do the same thing with the second one, and while those are drying, we're going to work on the vine. And so same thing, another 1/8 inch cut piece of lime green. I'm going to fold this in half, but I find that the more irregular, the more natural it looks, so I'm not worried about it being even. And then starting at a diagonal with the toothpick this time, we're going to start rolling the ends so they create a nice pretty spiral. And then another twist to it is I actually like to fold it over, kind of pinch it at a diagonal and roll both of those pieces up. And what's nice is it gives it this really nice S-curve when you're done. So we're just going to do the same thing with the other side. Find the bend in it where we folded it in half, give it a little fluff, and we've got our vine. And so now we're going to do a little garnishment and secure them. And so I'm going to put some glue on the bottom of the green and then also a little bit in between. And we're going to go ahead and smush this right underneath our stem to hide that seam there. And once it's secure, I'm just going to give it a little bit of shaping around the pumpkin so it looks a little bit more natural. We're going to do the same thing with the leaves. And so just a little dab of glue, push it underneath the stem, that way you're hiding that seam. And then I'm just giving it a push here at the end of the leaf, that way it just has a little bit of extra volume in case it flattened out there. Same thing with the second one. And then when you're done, if there's any excess glue, you can also go ahead and clean that off with your toothpick. And we have ourselves a cute little pumpkin. So this time I'm going to make a little bit larger gourd this time. And so the way to think about it with two-dimensional quilling is basically your paper width is going to essentially give you volume. So this time I'm going to cut these all down to 3/8 of an inch instead of 1/4. And I'm going to glue 2 orange quilling strips along with 1 green strip. And then we're just going to repeat the same process that we did before. And when all is said and done, I did a little extra accoutrement of a green strip on the top underneath the stem, but we have ourselves a gourd. So, if you want to bring a little bit of holiday into your project, one thing you can also do is turn that pumpkin into a cute little Halloween pumpkin. And so what I've done is I've just grabbed a 1/4 inch cut black strip, and I've made a smiley face with 2 buck teeth on it, put a little bit of glue on it, and I'm just going to secure that to the top of my pumpkin here. Now, if you find that you're kind of gluing in places that are a little tight for your fingers, another great opportunity for that toothpick is that it is so handy with working in small spots like that. And so same thing with the eyes. I've just cut 2 triangles and I'm just going to dab them with glue and attach them to the top of my pumpkin. And then once I've got them on, if you're not necessarily happy with where they are, because the glue has not had time to dry yet, feel free to move them around and adjust as needed. Again, toothpick opportunity, cannot stress it enough. It is such a great tool. And of course, when you're happy with where they are, give them an extra pat, make sure that they're secured, and then we can set that one aside to dry. And so for the gourd, I want to make this into an ornament. And so for me, I like to use jute. Feel free to use whatever you want, even ribbon. But one thing that I do find with jute is that the ends get frayed pretty easily, which can make it a pain to try and thread through. And so a little trick that I like to do is add a dab of glue at the end. And as I smooth out the glue, I'm just twisting it to secure all those fibers together and bring them to a nice point. That way it's easier to thread through any type of tight space on that ornament. And once you've got the glue kind of smoothed, we can just set that aside to dry. And let's go ahead and turn that cute little pumpkin into a fridge magnet. So these are just normal store-bought magnets that you can find at any craft store. As you can see, they do come with stickum, but I'm a firm believer, safety first. So I'm going to go ahead and grab my tacky glue, put a dab of that on it, and grab our quilled Halloween pumpkin here, secure it to the back. Make sure it sets in nicely and it's not moving around. And then we'll set that one aside to dry, and we have a cute little Halloween magnet ready for the season. And then now that our jute is also dried, we can go ahead and thread that through, tie a quick knot, and we have ourselves an ornament ready to hang. Now, one thing you can do, really it's your choice, but since the ends are already sealed, you can choose to leave it like that for a nice clean look. You don't have to worry about the ends fraying over time or anything like that. I personally love the natural look of jute, and so what I'm going to do is just cut those off. And that way I've got shorter ones that are a little bit frayed and look a little bit more homey, if you will. But there you have it, a pumpkin and a gourd. So thanks so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video. Please like and subscribe, help support the channel, and stay tuned for more crafts from the Honey Sea Star with Craftin' with Pam. Have a wonderful, happy harvest.